exciting programs that we're implementing here in the United States. We have an exciting panel of people from New York, San Antonio, and Miami who's going to share with you some of these programs. After that last panel, hopefully everyone now embraces the importance of financial empowerment programming and has now internalized how important and powerful such programs can be when it comes to serving low-income families. By way of history, in the United States, various financial empowerment and financial inclusion programs have existed for decades. Some might say that the beginning of the asset building initiative started back in the 1990s with the creation of the individual development accounts, the IDAs. Those were matched savings accounts that were developed specifically for low-income families with the goal of helping them to start to save. They were fixed, and they continue to be. They are targeted funds which are used solely for the purposes of helping to build assets, helping to allow people to buy homes, start businesses, invest in education, and the like. Financial education has been around for even longer than that, and so nonprofits and philanthropic institutions, many of which are represented here today, have been supporting this work for quite some time. I think the interesting new development in this field is really the intersection of municipal governments and local governments and how governments have started to play in this field and started to do work in this field. In 2008, the then mayors of New York City and San Francisco came together and founded something called the Cities for Financial Empowerment Coalition. And at that point, 6 cities joined together, and 6 cities that have not only demonstrated commitment in, but had successfully been operating financial empowerment programming for quite some time. They joined together and formed this coalition to really be a learning network and to learn from one another and support each other as the fields continue to grow and be developed. And since then, the coalition now has over a dozen different members, all of whom had to be invited, where the mayors have demonstrated support and have been building these programs for quite some time before they can actually be invited into the coalition. And so in this very same vein, my organization, the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, was created as an offshoot of this larger initiative. Our mission is to support cities in building, growing, integrating financial empowerment services into the larger social services field, particularly those that are provided by the municipal infrastructures. And forgive me, I keep saying cities as shorthand, but because we use it in our name. But when I talk about cities, we're really talking about local government at large. We're talking, in some instances, we work with cities. In some instances, we work with a county. For instance, the county of Hawaii, which is quite rural and spread out and have different needs and considerations. We've been asked to speak with tribal areas and the like. So the idea, I think, much of what we're going to talk about today, although we're going to be listening to panelists from three U.S. cities, I think much of these stories can be replicated and applied to local government in whatever the structure is. The reason why we focus on cities and local governments is really because we believe that the local governments are a great intersection of a whole host of things, right? So the local governments are often not only the largest providers of social services within a region, but they are also, and with that, they also have they have an ear to the ground. They have a good sense of what the communities and what the residents what the people in their communities needs, what the needs and desires are of the residents that they need to serve. Oftentimes, the local governments have control funding in some way, shape, or form. Right? It might be passed through from federal or whatnot, but there is some pocket of funds that they are able to control and make priorities and make changes based on what they believe those needs are. Local government also has the ability to manage regulatory matters in some instances. In New York, the New York City's Department of Consumer Affairs it regulates the tax preparers and debt collectors. In San Francisco, they use zoning laws to try and reduce payday lending and whatnot. So cities are a great intersection because they're allowed to do so many things and they have so many resources. So that's why this panel is really going to be focusing on cities today. And so and the other stories that you're going to hear us talk about are really talking about not only the programs, the financial empowerment programs that the cities are operating, but we're really going to explore the intersections of that. Jonathan Mintz had mentioned it earlier, and you're going to hear this word frequently throughout this conference today, the idea of a super vitamin. And the super vitamin, the idea there is really that the financial empowerment programs by themselves, they will help address financial instability. They will help families and individuals reduce their debt. They'll help them improve their credit when that's relevant. They will help them increase their savings, which is always a priority. So that will happen as a matter of course. The interesting thing, what I believe to be the most interesting, is when we partner these financial empowerment programs with other social services, when we partner them with homeless services, so that we help families that are currently in shelters to save, so that they have the ability and means to pay, to have their first and last month's rents, to be able to sign a lease and actually exit the shelter system. When we are working with domestic violence survivors who continually find themselves back in the homes of their abusers because they can't it's difficult to disentangle their finances from their abusers, and they lack the financial stability on their own to be able to go off on their own. And so it's these intersections, these super vitamin points, which you're going to hear a lot about, and why we believe financial empowerment programs can be very well presented, can be so well presented and integrated by local governments. So with that introduction, I'd love to turn the microphone over to Tamara Lindsay, to my left. She is the Director of Financial Empowerment Programs for New York City's Department of Consumer Affairs, specifically the Office of Financial Empowerment. In this role, she manages all of the programmatic work, which includes certainly the financial education and counseling work, the asset building work, which is really the savings work, as well as access to banking, building relationships with financial institutions. So Tamara.
Yep, take it away. Thank you very much for having us here. And I think I look around the room and see all these different countries and realize I've got a lot of vacations to plan. So if you have a good restaurant for me in your country, please come up at the party to let me know. But I'm a New Yorker, so I have to stand when I talk. So let me do that. So we were very excited that our newly appointed commissioner, Julie Menon, came this morning. And because this was her first event, we also got to talk to her a little bit before the meeting. And she's very excited about the opportunity to work with not only New York City, but also be able to share our stories. And that's sort of what I wanted to do today, is just give you a brief overview of the work that New York is doing. And you're going to be hearing from San Antonio and Miami as well. So no, wrong button. Our Office of Financial Empowerment was started in 2008, and we started because the focus was on trying to find new, innovative ways to help low-income New Yorkers. And so our model is to educate, empower, and protect New Yorkers, and I'll explain how we do that as a city. But one of the most important things of our office is that we're housed within the Department of Consumer Affairs, because a lot of our work is really about consumer protection. And the basis for a lot of what we're doing is to ensure that the consumer gets the right information, is able to make the right decisions, and then has access, as Kathy was saying in the other panel, has access to the right products and services. So we have to, before we start this conversation, just give you the groundwork of where we're working. So the environment in which our office operates is based on, New York is a city of approximately 8 million people. You've heard a lot of numbers in terms of 825,000 adults don't have a bank account. We also are living in an environment where our office began just as the recession was hitting with full force. And what we've seen the last few years, New York has experienced a good recovery, but it has been a slow recovery. We also have seen poverty rates increase very slowly as well. Currently in New York, it's about a 20% poverty rate. The other big thing is that we see a persistent disparity in income. And so what we're seeing is that people in the lowest brackets of income have not weathered the recession as well as the higher income levels. And so we're dealing with a huge gap in income as well. And in that environment, we then see the fact that people aren't financially secure. And one of the main ways we look at that is the savings that people have, and serves as sort of, if you have to weather a emergency, do you have the money to be able to do that? And last but certainly not least, this is a big city. There are a lot of people trying to trick the folks we were trying to help, try to set up traps to get them to pay money, telling them that if you give us a lot of money, we can help you reduce your debt, or pay a lot of money for a tax return and you can then get a bigger tax refund. And so this is our environment. But we are New Yorkers, and so we also realize that we can't turn the slide. There we go. We also realize that there's a lot of opportunities. And so as a New Yorker, we have a healthy optimism, but also a very practical side of things. And one of the things that has been a real opportunity in New York in this work is including local government. And then when I speak about local government here, it's really about the city, but there are a lot of lessons we can learn in terms of municipal governments or countries as a whole as well. So local government has been a clear force. The other really amazing thing about New York is the fact that there are countless of partners, organizations, and people wanting to do this work. The number of stakeholders that want to play a key role in helping low-income New Yorkers is so vast, and many of them are around in this room as well. So our work is only bolstered by the fact that there's this great network of organizations already doing this work. And also, for the last few years, the word financial inclusion, or helping low-income folks, or making sure that income inequality is addressed, is something that there's a huge spotlight on. And I think one of the most interesting things the last few months has been this idea that financial empowerment, as Jonathan mentioned, is not just something that is one thing that you can do, but we see financial empowerment as something that's a thread across different things. Housing, if you need affordable housing, healthcare, workforce development or employment. So that's sort of the opportunity that we're seeing. So how do we do this? So we wake up in the morning, and about 15 of us at the Office of Financial Empowerment go to work each day, and we're focused on 4 things. We're focused on 4 strategies that we're trying to do. Number 1 is, and they're not in order of importance, but more everything that we do. Number 1 is financial counseling and education. You're going to hear a whole lot more about our financial counseling model this afternoon. But one of the things we realized early on is education, and someone had asked about education in the previous panel. We realized that people needed the right information to make the right decisions. And included in that is they needed a trusted guide, which wasn't in New York. There were a lot of workshops being offered. There were a lot of really good one-on-one counseling, but we wanted to see how as a city we can develop that model. The other thing we also realized, and you heard about this in the last panel, is that access to financial products is not as great as we would like to see it in New York. And part of the issue is the fact that financial institutions are working their own business model. The folks we are trying to serve are needing certain kinds of things as part of their products. And so we look at as our job to connect those two, to make sure that we are working with financial institutions, banks, credit unions, others as well, to get people the products that they actually need that are relevant to their lives. And absolutely what we try and do, because one of the things we've constantly heard is, how can we save? How can I do better if I'm not making the money, if I don't have enough money to save? And so we want to work also on savings and asset building and making sure we boost income the way we can. And one of the main ways we try and do that is around the tax season, because people get a large tax refund, and how can we use that tax refund? And as I mentioned, everything that we do is about consumer protection. And so what we want to ensure is that we are having a system where people know what to expect from the services that they're getting, know what to expect from the products, and that we are advocating for policies that make this a safe environment. So we do this, we build a house, first of all. And so how we see this is that everything we do is around making sure that we understand the needs of the people we're serving, so the research plays a key role, that we then develop programs based on these 4 pillars of work that we're doing. And we constantly evaluate those programs to understand what is actually working and what isn't. And if we put it all together, our hope, and we've seen this happen, is that people do get more financially empowered, but it's about stability and financial stability, so that one thing doesn't knock them off and cause a huge ripple effect in their lives and impacts several other aspects of their world. So, several people have already touched on this. I just wanted to talk to you briefly about what this means for us in terms of local government. And so one of the interesting things we've tried to do is understand what is our role in this world. And like I mentioned, there's tons of really great partners doing great work. How can we make that work come to the forefront, and how can we make that work a lot stronger? And so one of the things we've really tried to focus on is integration. One of a really exciting project that we launched just last month was a partnership with the Mexican Consulate to offer a financial empowerment window. It's called the Financial and Counseling Window. I can say it in Spanish, but then you'll all laugh at me, so I'm not going to. But it has been a huge success, because one of there's sort of a recipe for what we see as success is a very willing partner, an extremely important need, and a demand for these services, and also a connection to people that the city normally doesn't have a connection to. People who go to the Mexican Consulate sometimes have an undocumented status in the city, feel like they cannot access city services, and so we wanted to bring those city services into the consulate. We've been working for about a month now and have seen close to 200 folks in that program, and so we really see that it's an amazing need. So integration has played a really important role, trying to find certain delivery systems to be able to integrate our work. The other thing, since we're local government, is also how do we sustain these programs? We just don't want it to be based on 1 year of receiving a grant. We want to make sure we find ways to incorporate our work so that it lives on beyond us. One of the ways we've tried to do this is through contracts. Many different city agencies have contracts with different nonprofits. How can we incorporate financial counseling? We work with the Human Resources Administration, which deals largely with public benefits, and they have a unit that works with domestic violence survivors. And we've worked with them quite a bit in terms of financial counseling, and about a year ago, they included that in their contract to find providers who are helping domestic violence survivors. That for us is a huge thing, because that means that the provider is accountable for that service, but now this service gets included in several different ways that we hadn't originally thought of. The other thing that Jonathan mentioned as well was quality, the fact that government's role can help to put a standard, and we've tried to do that especially around our financial counseling work. All of our financial counselors have to go to a course through our City University of New York in order to be a counselor, and so that ensures that we have a standard set of practices being taught, so that the service, regardless of the provider, you can expect the similar type of service. And finally, scale. I think scale has been a really important question, and in terms of city government, the big thing for us is that we have numbers of people to help, and how do we help those numbers of people? And for our story to be, you've heard this number that there's 825,000 adults in New York City that are unbanked. That's a very large number, but it's a number that we have to try and meet. And so scale, again, is something that we are always mindful of. Okay, so I wanted to highlight two of our programs and give you a sense of how we've thought about it. And so for us, when it comes to affecting change, we see this as designing programs, making sure that we have the right research to have these programs, evaluate how they work, see how we can make those successes something that is standardized and change policy, and finally look at scale and replication. This is, they all sort of are not linear, they can all work together, but this is sort of our overall thinking. So the first program is our tax time match savings program. When we started this in 2008, we recognized a need, which is that New Yorkers were not saving. In the US, the savings rate is very low. In New York, it shares a similar sort of figure. And so what we wanted to do is understand how can we design a program that provides an incentive for people to save, but also makes it the easiest way possible. And when people do their taxes in the US, it's there's a program called the Volunteer Income Tax Assistant Program, which offers free tax preparation services. And so we wanted to work with those groups to be able to say, when you have your tax refund, open a savings account, put a portion of this refund into a savings account, and if you save for approximately a year, you will get a match. And now there's numbers attached to that, and we can share those as well. But the idea being that we wanted to make it very easy for people, and we wanted to make sure that it happened right then and there when they had access to that money. Because one of the key things, as I mentioned, people say, I can't save because I don't have the money to be able to save because I need to pay several things in my life. And what we saw, so that was the program. We then did an evaluation of it to see, is this actually working? And I'm happy to say that in the last few years, we've seen about 4,700 accounts opened across the country, because we took this program from New York and looked to replicate it in 3 other cities as part of a larger grant. We also saw that the program was helping people increase their savings rate, but also increase the savings amount that they were saving as well. And finally, in terms of policy, scale, and replication, we had these exciting results. What do we do with it? And one of the things we wanted to do, which has been our original plan, was to make sure that we see a change in the tax code. And so we have been working to try and see a policy change. It's going to take a long time. As all of you know, government doesn't work as fast as we might want, but it is, we have been working for the last few years to see something happen in Washington, D.C. around a tax policy that encourages savings. And we also have been really excited to see the replication of this model. People have Googled us and found our report, so the internet works, and we have seen this report now be used as a model for other programs across the country. The other program that I'm excited about reporting on is our direct deposit program. And so this is, again, another thing where we recognized that New York City employees is a large number. There's about 250,000 New York City employees, and a lot of them, we have a really great rate of people direct depositing their salary, but there's about 20% who don't. And those people still get a paper check, which means that they have to go and cash that check, and means pay a portion of that check to be able to access their own paycheck. And so we wanted to see some sort of a difference in that. And we also recognize that it's, again, a city system that we can use as city government to work with other city agencies to get people to open an account, or simply say that they were going to direct deposit. And so we partnered with about 10 financial institutions. And what's important to say here as well with our banking products, we had to procure services from these financial institutions. So we were able to outline the terms and conditions that we wanted. And if you met those terms and conditions, you were included in our program. And the terms and conditions were based on our own work and research and experience, but also this sort of wearing the hat of making sure that this product was transparent, was affordable, and was safe for everyone. And so in the 3 years it's been opened, we've had 7,500 accounts, which is really exciting in terms of the numbers that we're looking at. And we've also tried to work with other employers to make sure that direct deposit is part of their overall program. So I will end with this, because I know that one of the things, one of the main points of this conference is sort of understand how this kind of work can be replicated. And I wanted to give people a sense of how we've thought about it. And so we sort of, and it looks fancy because it's PowerPoint, but it's, all of this sort of works together based on where you are. So when we launched our sort of phase 1, we really tried to spend time understanding needs of the city, of the people that we're trying to serve. We also really tried to promote this concept. I think one of the important things that we were out there quite a bit explaining what our office did, why this work was important, and we had the backing of evidence to show that there was a real need for this. The second phase of our work is really developing programs and research and evaluating those programs. And last, the third phase, which we're sort of in right now, which is, how do we take all those programs and that experience and change it, make it into policy, but also see this work and help people with this work in terms of technical assistance. So these aren't mutually exclusive, but they all work together in what we're doing, and we try very hard to sort of make sure, I think the main point is to make sure that we understand the needs that we're trying to serve. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Now I'd like to introduce Richard Keith from San Antonio. He's an Assistant Director of Human Services. Richard oversees, I have a laundry list of things that he oversees. He oversees the tax sites, the financial empowerment centers, early childhood programs, homeless services, all of that. And so Richard's going to talk to us and tell us a little bit about some of the work that he does in San Antonio.
Hi, everyone.
Is there a mic check?
Keep talking. I'm not sure what this means. Okay, now I'm good. All right. Okay, thanks everyone for coming and participating in this amazing day. It's going great so far. We're hoping for real change out of the meetings that we're having today. We've seen some real change already in the programs of governments and local governments, communities, certainly in the Cities for Financial Empowerment that our city is a participant in, and we're just really excited to spread this work in other places. So thank you again for being here. The city of San Antonio has recognized as a city government that with some of the challenges that we face, we have a per capita income that is about 19% lower than the average per capita income in the United States. For example, that there is a real connection between the kind of traditional economic development programs that we have been thinking about, that you have been thinking about. You know, economic development is a well considered and sort of tested approach. You know, bringing in industries, bringing in companies, major employers. That there's a real connection between bringing in those kinds of economic development opportunities and providing financial strengthening for the residents that will be participating in those jobs, hopefully, as they come to our cities. So that means having a workforce that is prepared for those jobs, and having a workforce that is prepared for the success that comes from better jobs. So that doesn't just mean education in its purest sense, in terms of vocational training, and technical preparedness for those jobs, but it also means being a full participant in our residents' financial lives. And so it's with this in mind that we have put together a series of programs that help us to strengthen the financial capabilities of our residents. Some of those efforts that we are engaged in are listed here on the screen. And what we do, I'm not going to go through and read all of these programs, but it's a lot of things that we have here. What we do, though, beyond just all of these individual dots, is to do everything that we can to connect those dots. So when a resident comes into one of our doors to seek assistance, we try to make sure that if there is another service that they're needing, that we put them very quickly and seamlessly into into connection with that other service. This kind of integration of services, as we call it, is really key, fundamentally key to our approach to the work that we do. And the integration of financial counseling is really paramount in importance as an element to be woven into all of these different programs. So you've heard about this morning, but I'm here to talk to you about how it plays out in one city. So why is integration important? Well, as I mentioned before, San Antonio as a community has a lot of challenges. So in the context of cities in the United States, San Antonio has per capita income, like I said, that's about 19% lower than the national average. We have about 20% of our households living below the poverty level. Now I know this is in context. There are other places that have even higher levels of poverty. In the context of the United States, though, this is significant. We have 20% of our adult residents, aged 25 and older, who have less than a high school diploma. So we have real challenges in our city, in San Antonio, but we also have some strengths and opportunities. In the context of the United States, Texas has a major powerhouse economy, growing economy. Even worldwide, I think the Texas economy has really been at the forefront, especially in the last few years, as other economies have not done as well. And San Antonio is very much a part of this, at the heart of that economy, along with the cities of Dallas and Houston. So we have low unemployment. So we have a low per capita income, but we have low unemployment. And we also have very low home prices that contribute to a very high home ownership rate. So our question to ourselves is, how can we improve the employment situation? How can we improve home ownership rates? And how can we make people more prepared and active participants in the financial market and financial marketplace? So I have an example. I have an example here of integration of services. We have one client. Her name is Ms. Gonzalez, and she is a university student. She lives with her mother, who is disabled, and she has a hard time making ends meet every month. So that means that she's using her leftover financial aid, federal financial aid that she gets, to pay for household expenses. She's been in a pattern of borrowing money from high-interest, dangerous consumer lending institutions and products. And just in a sort of a period or a cycle of financial crisis. When she came to us, she was working in a restaurant, but she's now studying to be a dental hygienist. So when she finishes with that program, she's going to be in a much better situation than she was when she first entered our program. We'll be helping her by paying for her tuition, or a portion of her tuition to get there, but we'll also be doing other things besides just that. That's kind of the classic economic development approach, right? But we'll also be working with her to reduce her debt through financial counseling. We'll be working with her to improve her credit rating. We'll be working with her to provide referrals to other community services that will help her to be successful in the short run while she's in school, so that when she gets out of school, she will make more money. And as she has a higher income, she will be more prepared with stronger tools to manage that higher income that she will be receiving. And in this way, we see the integration of financial counseling and financial inclusion and empowerment programs into the economic development work that we're doing. So why financial counseling? The city saw the need for one-on-one financial education with our residents and the multiple populations that we serve across these programs that you saw a few minutes ago. We tried classroom-based education, and classroom-based education has for years been the standard. Financial institutions have provided this. Some educational institutions, like colleges, even high schools, have sometimes offered this. But we don't think that those classroom-based models are the most effective model. What we really see, and what you heard from other presenters earlier today, is that people at the end of those classes, at the end of those workshops, quickly raise their hand and say, well, here's my situation. How can I get out of this situation that I have? How can I improve this situation? And for this reason, we have found in our own experience that financial counseling, one-on-one financial counseling, really is the key. Classroom-based education for financial education is not the key. So in our financial empowerment centers, we have 2 centers where we're providing this financial counseling. We've served over 1,400 residents in the last year. We have about 800 of these residents that are actively working to reduce their debt and thereby improve significantly their financial situation. And we have reduced debt in San Antonio among residents by over $650,000 to date in about the last 10 months or so of the program that we've been operating. Okay, so this integration approach to financial inclusion and financial empowerment that I've been talking about that San Antonio has is the same approach that the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund and the cities that are engaged in the Cities for Financial Empowerment have been using. Together, there is a group of cities, started out with 6 and now is over 11 cities, that come together periodically about 3 or 4 times a year to share best practices around these financial inclusion and financial empowerment programs so that we can learn from each other and steal the best practices from each other. And we offer up best practices, and then we steal best practices from others. And by doing this, I think Miami, New York, San Antonio, and the other cities engaged in this dialogue have been able to raise the bar for the role of local government and for government in general, but local government in particular, in this financial inclusion work. And we really believe in the work, but we really believe in the local government's role in the work in particular. Now, we don't do it all alone. We work very closely with our nonprofit partners in each of our communities to do the work. But we believe in the model that we're using, and we want you to think very carefully about using some of the techniques, some of the thinking that we've been sharing with you today. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to try to be as brief as possible here, but I did want to just share with you what I'd really like for you to see is really more of a strategy, more than anything else, in what we're doing at the city. Did I just do that? Oh, thank you. Can we give a good hand to our AV people here that have been doing? No, honestly, because without them, I'd have to dance up here like somebody. I don't know. This is a presentation for the City of Miami. Give you a real context, because I was just having a conversation earlier this morning. The City of Miami is one of 37 municipalities in Miami-Dade County. So if you come to me and you say, Willie, I really like the beaches in Miami, you weren't in the City of Miami. Okay, you were in the City of Miami Beach, which do have nice beaches. So my presentation has to do with engaging and connecting with citizens. So that's what we're going to talk about real brief here. Can you shift to the next one? The strategy, and I'm going to show you a brief history of the City of Miami. Thank you so much. Back in 2000, I started in 2003 with the City of Miami from the private sector. So all this government stuff was, wow, it was pretty crazy to me. I'm still trying to figure it out. So, what was interesting is what the previous administration grabbed onto was that the City of Miami was the largest poorest city in the entire nation, according to the census number. So that's a big deal. So I'm grateful to the administration that they actually put out legislation. It was quite innovative of them, basically saying we're going to take tax dollars and we're going to attack this problem. And we need a crazy Cuban to lead this thing. So I have no idea how I even ended up there. So I won't go into that. So we started new partnerships. One of the things that I did in 2003 is many of the cities do the same thing in terms of the earned income tax credit, something in the United States that is a big anti-poverty initiative, which is really telling people about these credits that are out there, but they need to apply for them. So I did the same thing. As Richard said, I steal and borrow and beg. In 2004, I started new programs with the city to try to get some traction at the ground floor level. In the beginning, it was called the Anti-Poverty Initiative. So in 2005, I changed the name to Access Miami, because no one that I know wants to belong to an anti-poverty initiative. So Access Miami is an acronym. It stands for Assets, Capital, Community, Education, Savings, and Success. Okay? I'm probably one of the few that actually delve on both sides of the coin. I help our low, moderate income working families and our small business communities. Give you a brief synopsis. The state of Florida is about 90%, 20 employees or less is the bulk of 90% of those businesses are 20 employees or less. When you get into the city of Miami, 95% of the businesses in the city of Miami are 5 employees or less. So there's a phrase I coined, it's called entrepreneurship by necessity. People get into entrepreneurship because they need the income to just survive, okay? If you can go to the next one, I'd appreciate it. So Access Miami, we're not going to, it's a coordinated effort. This is intentional. The city of Miami is involved in doing this work. So we want to help low, moderate income working families and the small business community. You've heard the phrase says, you know, making ends meet. When people say I'm making ends meet, my goal in the city is to try to make them overlap, even slightly, for our constituents. You can move the next one. I'm sorry I'm having to make you do that, so. I spend my time doing one of these 4 things every day at work. As a municipality, I want to facilitate access to benefits, access to capital, help our constituents accumulate wealth and assets, and almost all of the programs have a financial literacy or financial education component. Access to benefits is a simple one. You have a benefit that's out there, like the Earned Income Tax Credit, but my constituents don't know about it. What role is the city of Miami going to play to let more people apply for those benefits that they're eligible for? So we want to not just get the benefit, we want to move them from an income mobility standpoint. We don't want them to stay where they're at. We want to move them. Access to capital is the same way. We actually funded, and I think I saw somebody here from Acción USA. We actually helped bring Acción USA into Miami back in 2003. We funded them alone at $500,000, just so you can get at it. These are hard dollars. Accumulating wealth and assets. We've also done the same thing through IDAs and savings accounts and so forth. If you can go to the next one. I'm not going to spend too much time here. These are all of the different programs, just like what Keith does. Tax and Financial Services Match Savings Program. I have a multi-benefit platform that actually Jonathan was there when we actually promoted that, which is linking the system that they were using at the local level with the state level. Micro lending, I created by Miami.biz to market our local businesses. Started AccessMiamiJobs.com and Miami Census and other things. So if you can shift to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. This is in terms of financial education, which is why we're all here. We started with the simple approach of getting in the forefront of the needs in our community, foreclosure prevention, banking, and so forth. So we did the same thing. We did workshops, just like a lot of the cities started, and then it delved into and it moved into financial coaching, which you'll see in a minute. We also, because you're looking at the entire staff of Access Miami, okay? So because of that, you need to train other people, you need to multiply yourself. So I trained a lot of faith-based and community organizations to actually do the work, okay? If you can go to the next slide. This is the strategy in an image form. So you have the cornerstones, right? You have access to benefits, access to capital, accumulating wealth and assets, and financial education. And there's really only 3 ways you can really run the program. You either run it by yourself, so you pay for it, you administer it, you do everything yourself, right? It's city leverage program, because you probably can't read that. That means you co-administer, but you also co-fund the program, right? And the final one is a city partnered program, which a lot of us do, which is there's really no direct funding involved by the city, but you're co-administering the program, okay? And then now you start plugging in programs. So over here you have access to benefits, you have free income tax credit, you have the benefit bank, you have construction focused training here, small business events. Visually, what becomes apparent to you just by looking at the one slide? Anybody? There's...
You don't do anything.
No, besides that. My boss tells me that all the time. No, what it becomes apparent is that we don't want to have a lot of city-run programs, just me, myself, and I. So I run the program. That's only one of the few. The rest are all co-administered and co-funded. Okay? Because it's only Willie Poro, so you gotta multiply yourself somewhere in this equation. So that's pretty much how it looks visually, and these are all the programs just as a sampling. So can you move to the next one louder? Thank you. This is how, again, we've done the train-the-trainer workshops of various things. So if we saw an issue in the city of Miami, we were one of the first out there to try to combat the issue. If it was foreclosure prevention in the city of Miami, we were the epicenter of foreclosures in the country. If the city was just going to stand by and watch other nonprofits do this, that's not going to work. There are constituents. They're paying our salaries. We need to do something. Go to the next one, Laura, please. This is basically how we ran across, in the great work that the CFE has done in the coalition, is we moved from, and Richard talked about it, which is really just having the classes, which people already have the knowledge. No one in this room, if I talk to you, would say, you really shouldn't save. That's an absurdity. Of course you should save, right? Well, people have the knowledge, but we need to move them in a behavioral sense. So you start here with financial problems and struggles, connect them and improve their situation, and then you move them to where they want to go. That's really what financial coaching does, which, like Richard says, you can't do that in a classroom. So you have to have the financial coaching. Go to the next one, please. Oh, that one didn't. Yeah, one of the things I'll tell you is coming from the private sector into government, which I thought was quite funny. It wasn't at the time, but I thought everybody wanted to be my friend. But the intention was that they were all other nonprofits and it's not a hit on nonprofits, but they all wanted funding directly to the city. In other words, William, City of Miami, give us the funding and we'll take care of the problem. Well, no, most likely we have a lot of infrastructure that we can benefit to our constituents to actually do it cheaper than other forms. So not everybody that came to the city had the same intentions the city had to do the work. So that's very important. Let's see if we can go. I love this slide. We've all touched on it in one shape or form, but this is visually what we're trying to achieve and what our part as city government plays in it. You have your constituents here. Doesn't matter who they are, small business or low moderate income working families. They're looking for tax advice, credit, homeowner, transactions, so forth. Private sector, they have to be part of the equation. One of the ways that I was able to even get remotely close to Richard's great work in Texas, they do more tax returns than many of the private sector does there, was to unite myself with a big private tax preparer to do the work they were doing, but do it cheaper. In other words, instead of charging $150, look, if they come to you and they're EITC eligible, do it for $25 or $30. And they said, yes, we'll do it. I increased their business, and I helped our constituents. So don't forget the private sector. Foundations. We can't thank you enough because a lot of the things that you provide to us is seed capital, and I know that I speak for everyone and we're very grateful for that. NGOs, we also need the thought leadership that many of you provide at the local level. And finally, that's us right there. We can control agendas, mandate access. We have infrastructure. We have great people and great organizations that we can actually use to provide some of the service. I'll give you a real quick example. We have 10 offices in the city of Miami called net officers. They're like little mini city halls, if you will, in the city. I went with them and I said, look, you can help your constituents in a very simple way using technology. Somebody had mentioned it before. But let me train you in doing this. It won't take a lot of your time. So the infrastructure was already there. We now can provide food stamps and tax prep services at those 10 offices. It doesn't cost the city any more money. We already have the people there. They're obviously willing. We train them. And now over 2,000 people every tax season get help free of charge through something that we already have. So, lessons learned. I got a lot more pushback from really the community and some other sectors versus internal government. So municipalities can lead and take the charge. Don't create steal things from other people. People have already done the work for you. I will steal anything in this room that will work. I won't have to do a report on it, and I'll use it. Don't recreate. And then stay ahead of the curve. If you already see it in government, whatever it might be, try to lead the charge there. Get even a couple of people, your commissioners or your mayor, to be part of it. It's going to be a great blessing to your constituents, and it really doesn't take a lot. And learn from the experts in the field. I want to take a shout just to CFE Fund. They came to the city recently and gave us technical assistance on our own financial coaching, and we can't thank them enough for doing that. That saved us a truckload of time. We were dealing with a certain sector of people. We want to expand it. So we're grateful for them for learning from those experts. And I think the last one is my contact information. I'm the easiest person to get a hold of. I have this thing strapped to my waist 24/7 except the shower. So you please don't hesitate to contact me, really. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Willie and Richard and Tamara. This was great. Hopefully it gives you guys all, everyone in the audience, a good sense of the types of programs that cities are implementing here in the States, and the breadth of programming and some of the partnerships that are being implemented. I actually do have a couple of questions for the panelists, but I also want to recognize their lunch is right around the corner, and we're the only thing holding you up before food. So I want to also look around the room to see if there are any questions. Maybe we can start there, and if not, then I will. And then Ambassador after, Nomeline after that.
Good
Yes.
afternoon, Julia Hyatt from Jamaica.
Hello.
Hi. Tamara Lindsay, a question for you. You mentioned that you're working with the government in terms of policy change in the tax code that would encourage savings. Could you give us an idea of what is being recommended specifically? Thank you.
Sure. So the program, the way bill is introduced in Congress to affect this change, and so it's called the Financial Security Credit. The idea is it's modeled after our Save USA program. So it would be that you would save a portion of your tax refund. You would then save it for approximately a year, and your next year you would get a credit on your refund because you've indicated that you've saved. So the idea is, the details are being worked out, but the idea is that you then use, because people have mentioned the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a tax credit for people who work, so that even if you aren't you don't have a tax liability, you don't have to pay a tax. If you make less than a certain amount of money, you have a certain amount of children, you do get a credit on your tax refund, which kicks up your refund a little bit. So the idea is similar to that if you show that you are saving a portion of your tax refund for approximately a year, then you would get a credit for that savings.
Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Carmen Lomelin, Ambassador to the U.S. Ambassador to the OAS. I have a question for all three of you. How are you dealing with the issue of predatory lending / financial institutions like currency exchanges and other entities that offer these ridiculous credit cards with 25% interest, among other things?
25% interest is actually the least of our worries. If all consumer loans were at 25% interest, I think we would probably be thrilled. The problem is that those consumer loans, the so-called payday loans, right, are usually in excess of 250% annual percentage interest, APR, and that's the problem. I think all of our cities have been engaging in some way in trying to address this problem. In the city of San Antonio, we have passed several local ordinances that restrict the interest rate and the number of times that they can be flipped over for additional fees each time that they're flipped over. But our approach is to not just make a regulatory change without also trying to address the market need. So we have worked with at least one of our local credit unions to provide an alternative product, a product that's around 20% APR. And then Acción Texas is another very large nonprofit in our area that that is also offering an alternative product at about, I think theirs is about 25% interest. Actually about 30% interest, I think. And then there's a third one called the Rio Grande Multibank that also has one that's about 25% interest. So by regulating and by addressing the market need for that, and that, combined with woven throughout financial education, this is how we're approaching the problem.
What we did in the city of Miami is actually part of a contract that we had with the local tax preparer, one of the largest ones. And part of our agreement, we had a 5-year agreement with them, was that they cannot promote those particular products. Any signage they had to take down. And when we went through the why behind it, it's interesting to know that about 20% of their clientele jumps from one tax provider to another just if they just see the sign. So by eliminating the signs, it reduced the consumption of that product. So that's how we did it. Yeah.
So New York, one of the key things is that it is illegal in New York for payday lending, and so we have that covering us, but what we've also tried to recognize is, as Richard was saying, the kind of need. So our Save USA program, it's people have a need for short-term savings, and it's oftentimes why they go for these kinds of really bad loans. And so one of the things we've been trying to do is, the message of Save USA is also you have to have short-term savings to help you deal with some of those things.
Yes, from Granada.
Brenda from Grenada. I just want to say that the presentation...
Oh, so sorry, the microphone is coming to you. Thank you.
Brenda Hood from Grenada. I just want to say that the presentation so far this morning is very enlightening, and I trust at the end of it all I would have something to take back to Grenada.
Yes.
But most importantly, I like the new word, super vitamin effect. I think it's a good word that can be taken back to the Caribbean. But I would like to say, in terms of the Financial Empowerment Center,
yes.
I like that concept, but how do you engage your people in a country like mine that has unemployment close to 40%? How do you get them to move to another level? How do you take a program like this? Because I believe that if the template is right, you can take it back and you can bring it into the communities and work with the people. How can something like this really, because at the end of the day, we all want to get rid of poverty.
Of course.
And this is one way in which you are able to empower them to take care of themselves.
Well, thank you for that question. We are actually so very briefly, the financial empowerment centers do work with not only those who are employed, but those who are unemployed as well. And there are many things that can be done to help guide unemployed individuals to still improve their finances, oftentimes coupling it with the other social services. That said, this afternoon there's going to be 2 panels specifically focusing on the financial empowerment centers, where there's going to be counselors and the program managers here who can probably address that in much more detail than any of us can. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, yes, Salvador Perez Galindo from Visa Latin America. Just a question for the 3 panelists. If you could comment on your experience with employer-based banking through direct deposit. I understand that in the city of San Francisco, as part of the coalition, there have been significant efforts in that respect. Visa has been partnering also in that city. I'd like to hear, because only Tamara mentioned briefly the case of New York, how you are addressing that, the extent to which you're involving the private sector, and more significantly, how you see the experience for Latin American countries. Uruguay, for instance, just passed a law mandating direct deposit for payroll, social benefits, retirement. I think that's a no-brainer in terms of provoking financial inclusion. I don't know if you have some type of mandates or whether you like to promote more of a voluntary direct
We've done it in the city of Miami, not to any great extent, and not as much as I would like, but I would love to talk to you if you want to do something in the city of Miami. I'm an old Amex person, American Express person, so I think there's a great area of need where the credit card companies can actually provide value. One of them, because of our micro enterprise makeup, You'd have to do a lot more with the smaller ones, but I think that's something that can be discussed. I've done it on a one-offs type basis with larger entities in the city. The school system, the city of Miami itself, and the county. Those three are the largest three employers in the entire county. So if I just deal with them and say, hey, provide this to your own employees, direct deposit, the simple things that you're mentioning, earned income tax credit, I created a really nice, it's more than a brochure, but it's a whole guide for an employer to use. So I'd like to share that with you if you'd like.
And if I can speak on behalf of some of the other cities that are part of the coalition but who don't happen to be here today, San Francisco is a great example. They have an enormous employer initiative where they literally make partnerships with large employers and speak on and work with their HR, their human resources departments to kind of to promote direct deposit. Similarly in Savannah had targeted a lot of hotels, recognizing that the hospitality industry is a large component of the business there, but also that many of the people who work within the hotels are amongst the lowest paid individuals within the cities, and so they had gone literally door to door from Sheraton to Hilton to whomever and built the relationships to really engage with the employers to provide such services. Similarly, as part of CFE as part of the CFE fund, there is a National Bank on 2.0 initiative which we are starting. And the idea of the Bank On initiative, the Bank On 2.0 initiative, is really to figure out what are, instead of broadly just negotiating account terms for a large swath of residents, saying a city, for instance, a city at large, let's try and identify program integrations. Let's try and identify individuals, categories of people, whether they are youth in summer youth employment programs, or whether they are low-income employees, or whatever it is, and then identify what the exact needs are for those groups of individuals, and then negotiate locally but also nationally on behalf of these entities. And so that's another initiative that we're working on right now, more nationwide. Thank you. Yes. Oh.
Hermione Anthony.
Yes.
From St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yes.
There are some threads that I see running to most of the great presentations. There are some threads that I see, and one of them has to do with data-based research work,
yes,
which I think is one of our main areas of need in the Caribbean.
Yes.
How do we drive what we do? Even microfinancing that we have provided, one of the fallouts have been, what are the follow-ups? And how in fact do we determine what it is we do?
Yeah.
I would like to know, for example, whether in New York, where you have a wide variety of people from all over the world, whether you've done any inventories of existing informal types of saving initiatives and have used that to build on it, or you have always started from a state focus, done the research. Who supports the research? Who finances the research? Those are some of the questions that
Wonderful.
I wanted
Thank you.
to
Tamara,
ask.
do you want to take it talk about the FEN and some of the
Yeah, I can talk about New York.
scans?
So absolutely, when we started, when I said our sort of phase one was around understanding the needs, that's exactly what we wanted to do. We started with a study called the Neighborhood Financial Services Study, where we looked at 2 neighborhoods in New York City to understand access to financial services. And from that, we learned some key things. One of the assumptions, a lot of the times when we make these assumptions, and they're smart assumptions because we've done the work to get to that point, but one of the things we assumed was people aren't opening a bank account because there's no bank in their neighborhood. And what the study showed was that the fact that there could very well be a bank in your neighborhood, but the products being offered aren't correct for them. And so that's where our NYC Safe Start program began, because we wanted to create a product that would actually make sense for someone in the population that we're trying to serve. All of our work is absolutely based on the kind of research that is needed to understand exactly what it is we're doing. The Mexican consulate work that we are doing now is based on our immigrant financial services study, where we learned that there was actually an opportunity. The Mexican community is very much interested in being included in the financial mainstream. They just have perceptions of the fact that the services aren't being offered in Spanish, or they have perceptions that if they're undocumented, they can't access those services. And so we then built a program around that. I think our strongest programs are ones that come from understanding that need. And then also we have a really great data team at our office that focuses on making sure that we are evaluating the program, that we're tracking the numbers so that we understand what's actually happening on the ground so that we can make these programs even stronger.
Just to piggyback on what Tamara was saying about people having sometimes access to financial services but choosing not to engage in those financial services. One thing that we've noticed with the payday lenders, the high-cost consumer lenders that we talked about in San Antonio, is that compared to the banks, if you think about banks, banks are sort of monolithic institutions. When you walk in, they're full of marble, they're very quiet, you drop a pin, you can hear the pin drop. It's extremely formal, you have to keep your voice down. It's very intimidating. And by contrast, a payday lender in San Antonio, at least in our experience, will have like throw rugs, they'll have couches, they'll have snacks, they sometimes have the
Cookies
music that people who would be visiting them want to hear, in our case, like let's say Tejano music or Norteño music, and so they're very inviting places. So one of the ways that we've addressed this kind of a phenomenon is to work with one of our financial partners to provide an alternative product, but to provide it in a place where they would go normally. So there is a second-hand clothing chain that is run by a nonprofit organization called Goodwill Industries, and embedded into these clothing stores, second-hand clothing stores, right? So used clothing, is a branch of their credit union. It's in the thrift store. And in this way, it's much less intimidating to our residents to start having a conversation about financial services.
Well, thank you for that. I think we have time for one last question before we turn over to lunch. Yes, from Antigua.
Almira Henry, Antigua and Barbuda. We are in the process of doing a social protection reform. And one of the challenges we're facing is with respect to the exit strategy of persons who receive benefit. And I'm sitting and wondering if through this program and the experiences that you've shared with us, one, if the the opportunity would be available for even more involved working relationship coming on the ground and understudying any of these programs. But funding is a challenge, so I say that up front. And I wonder if some of the partners that are here, that have been listed on this sheet, if we would be able to approach them for funding such sort of attachment. I'm intrigued by the various components of your program and your target population, poor households. We already know, because we're a population of about 80,000. And we already know who the poor persons are within that society. But to move them to the level of savings, because we do have the threat of disasters ever so often, particularly hurricanes, and the poor persons within our communities are the ones who are most affected. They do not have savings, although they receive social assistance is barely enough to sustain them, far more to save. And with all of this that I'm saying, I am trying to play in my mind how I can create a program to encourage savings from the social assistance that they receive. Or if the government, I could make a proposal for the government to top it up so that some savings can come out from it, and how I'm gonna let it all play out. So I would need further in-depth, coming and seeing it work, and the councils at work and so on, to build up our local program. And I think I speak for joining in support of what Grenada was saying, to take this and replicate it in the region.
Absolutely. So one of the main, thank you so much for bringing this up, that actually gets us back to why we're having this conference at all. The idea of this conference, as it was originally contrived, was not necessarily just to kind of get everyone in a room and bring you all up to New York because it's a fun city, although I'm biased, I think it is a fun city. But rather it was to make sure that we have all the right people in the room to get to that point, so that we have, of course, you guys, the delegates from your nations, to come talk, to share the stories about what the reality is in the countries that you serve, but also to bring the private sector. Probably tomorrow there's going to be many more. Today it's more of the nonprofit providers, but tomorrow there's going to be a lot more people from the private sector, from the lists that you have in front of you, who are going to be engaging in conversations. That's what the roundtable is at the end of tomorrow, so that we can engage in conversations and kind of really say, okay, well, private sector, this is kind of what I'm interested in, and this is what I fund. These are the products and services that we have. Country, these are the issues that we have to resolve. Let's have some conversations, and of course, around the room, we also have a ton of people from nonprofit providers here in the States. We have some people who focus on the international space. We have behavioral economists. We've got educators. We've got financial institutions, small credit unions and the like, who will hopefully join us for a three-part conversation to really figure out what is it that we want to do after this conference is over. What is it that we want to do to get you the technical assistance you need in your country, whether it's somehow coming up with waving a magic wand and finding money for my shop, CFE Fund, who does technical assistance. We work with all of these cities and provide technical assistance in that way. We go, as Willie mentioned, my team has gone out to Miami kind of to do that kind of evaluation and say, this is kind of what we've seen. These are things that we think can make it a little bit better based on our experience. So I think that you're getting to exactly the point, and I so appreciate the fact that you brought this up, because that's what we're going to, that's kind of what we'll continue the conversations with today and tomorrow. But before we turn over to lunch, I actually wanted to turn the mic over to Kim Osborne from the OAS.
Thank you so much. I think the discussion has been excellent. Just for a few housekeeping announcements, you've received expressions of interest. All the delegates, the countries have received a two-pager with expressions of interest, exactly what Ishin just spoke about. We're going to facilitate the dialogue and the discussion around roundtables tomorrow in the breakout sessions. If you could please indicate to us, in order of preference, the organizations that you would like to meet with. So you will see a list of organizations on the document. You will tell us at the bottom your name of the country, please fill that in, and which organizations. Rank them from 1 to 3, and tomorrow morning we will give you your assignments by table. And as Ishin mentioned, we'll have the private sector at the table, and we'll also have many of the stakeholders here at the tables to continue the discussion to make sure that we are matching needs with opportunities. So we really want to make sure that you fill this out and return it to us tomorrow morning at the conference table. Sorry, this afternoon after lunch at the conference table, at the registration desk, please return them to us. Thank you so much and enjoy your lunch.